How's it going, YouTube? Today I'm going to show you how to do a 13 Pro camera lens. As we can see, this one is kind of messed up. I'm going to show you, pretty much walk you through everything, all the tools that I will be using. There'll be links in the description, so if you want to support the channel, yeah, use those links. So there are basically two ways to perform this repair. The first is from the outside with no disassembly, but that has some disadvantages, mainly that you could, in the process, get all bits of broken glass on the actual lens, and then you actually end up needing to replace your lens where you didn't need to before. The second way is a little bit longer, which is what I'm going to be doing today, which involves disassembly, removal of the screen, pulling out the camera, and then we can pop our lenses in. I realize that's a bit hectic, especially removing the screen. But I'm going to walk you through how to do all of that. Yeah, if there's anything I missed or anything you have any questions about, feel free to leave a comment. And I also take mail-ins, so if you end up looking at this repair and you say, hell no, my contact info, my contact details are below. So, we start out with, ideally, a heat mat. Or sometimes I use my hot air gun. You can use a hair dryer, but the most important part is basically two tools: a magic glass and 99, but you can also use 91% isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Basically what it does is it takes the strength out of the stickiness of the perimeter gasket, and then you use the magic glass to pry up on the screen. I've done this without heat, but heat just makes it a little bit easier. So you can turn off the device. Usually I'll keep it on at this stage. I'll show you why in just a sec. But as you can see, our tool doesn't go in very far. I'll take a couple of drops. Start gently. And you should feel it maybe somewhere around maybe a 45-degree angle. Then I come in with a little bit more. So as you can see, I'm barely in the phone. The corners are the hardest part to get past, but once I am, I use a twisting technique. So rather than just running along the edge of the screen, you can achieve the same effect. You do want to be careful. Your screen flex is here. You don't want to open the screen more than about this much. And from this point, the screen, it opens to the left. So we will just wiggle the screen back and forth until this happens. Now, before we remove any of our, disconnect our flexes, the first thing is to disconnect our battery. Just because the device is off, there's still electricity running through the board. I'll mention that again, but before you reconnect all this after the work is done, Battery must be disconnected. That's our screen. We can set it aside. Now, it's not a bad idea to put your screen in a little baggie, especially if this repair is going to take you a while. So now we just need to heat up our lens. We'll start peeling it off. Then we'll use a razor to clean up the edges, apply our adhesive, pop our lens on, and then throw everything back in. So this is where I'm going to use a little bit stronger heat. So now we're going to take some rubbing alcohol, prep the surface. So the shiny side faces up, the dull side faces, so I don't know if you can tell right there, but the dull side, which is facing up right now, faces down. Apply pressure. Now, depending on how long it took you to get to this particular part, you probably shouldn't have any dust or debris in your actual camera, on this side of your camera lens. But if you do, clean it out. Once again, before we start connecting anything, make sure our battery is disconnected. Come back with our screen. Now on wider flexes, I tend not to, especially the really expensive ones, because if you damage the flex, you basically damage the screen. But I like to press right or left rather than dead center, as the flex can bow if you apply too much pressure in the wrong area. This one is more forgivable or forgiving. Now we can connect our battery. Now, this is just my personal preference, but I like to test the functionality of the device before putting all my plates back in, as if something didn't go according to plan. Like, let's just say there's a speck of dust in the camera lens and you got to pull it out. It's just annoying to have to undo all this work, but you do you. So I can proceed with throwing everything back in. Remember, basically everything is tri-wing with the exception of this and this. So this plate, the Phillips goes here and here. Everything else is tri-wing. So at this point, you can choose to replace the perimeter gasket. Doing so will not make the phone water resistant. Yeah, so there's that. I'm not going to, because the majority of the gasket remains. And pretty much the only thing that the gasket can do at this point is just keep out dust and make it so that whenever you're tapping or texting, the screen isn't clicking up against the frame. As I have the majority of my gasket here, I'm not going to bother with putting in another perimeter gasket. Next, with the there are loose screws that often will end up getting sort of lost in some of these crevices. And the last thing that you want to do is close your phone, have a screw sticking up where it's not supposed to be, and then you damage your really expensive screen. So let's not do that. They tend to get stuck along either the perimeter gasket, the ear speaker, the Taptic engine, or the loudspeaker, but I have also seen them just popping up in random places. Like sometimes they'll get stuck in like where the screen is supposed to clip into. So just give it a once over. Once it's good to go, then we can proceed with closing our device. So usually I seat it from the right corner first and then the left, but you just as easily can do either one. It's supposed to be flush. And that's all she wrote.